Hi and welcome. It's new release day at Technique Junkies. There's a new collection of stamps that were released for November 2021. New release stamps are on sale for 15% off now through November the 8th. If you see something on the website that you like that's not part of the new release, you can use my coupon code TJ10Tracy and save 10% off those items. Let's get started. The first stamp I have is called Courage. It says, courage isn't having the strength to go on. It's going on when you don't have strength. I'm going to be using a technique that spotlights the center of the card. So I have some masking paper. And when I started this project, I die cut some circles that were the same size as the image. And I die cut those into this masking paper. And I'm just lining this masking paper up. And what I'm doing is just lining the top of the paper with the top of the card. And then I'll slowly peel away the paper. This helps me to get a nice straight application of the masking paper. If you don't have masking paper, you can use just a regular piece of cardstock and cut the circle out and just use that as your mask. Now, while I am struggling to get the top of this straight, I wanted to let you know that the new release at Technique Junkies also has a bundle that's called Gotta Have It All. And if you're interested in the entire release, you can purchase the bundle out of savings. So that's another option for you. After a few minutes, I finally did get this on straight enough anyways. And I just kept this in so you would see that it sometimes is hard to get the paper to lay down straight, but it's okay. It's masking paper. It's not that tacky. It'll pull right back up and you can reposition it. Now I'm taking Catherine Pooler Tiara ink and I'm covering the entire inside of this area. And you'll see, getting ink on my masking paper. That's perfectly fine. And I'm just trying to get a nice even amount. Now I'm going in with another Catherine Pooler ink. This one is called Tiki Torch. And I'm going outside that circle that I just created. And I'm just basically blending just along the edges with this. Just along the very edge of that mask. I'm not going in to the center of the circle that I've already ink blended. I will grab my tiara and just blend that a little bit better so that it doesn't look like there are any harsh lines. So I'm pretty pleased with this blend. The Catherine Pooler inks blend very easily. And I am using a smooth cardstock. It's called Hammermill Premium Color Copy Cover Paper. And it is one of the best cardstocks I've found yet for ink blending. Also with ink blending, you want to make sure that your ink pad has, a nice amount of ink in it. So it's nice and juicy. Now what I'm doing here is I have a piece of acetate, which is just the plastic film that comes with your stamps. If you don't have any acetate, you can just use a plastic cellophane bag that your stamps come in and use that. Anything that's see-through. I was using Catherine Pooler Archival Ink Midnight, which is the Catherine Pooler black ink. And I do use Catherine Pooler Midnight ink on my red rubber stamps quite frequently. However, if you do use it on your photopolymer or clear stamps, it will stain. So just be very careful about that. I wasn't satisfied with that. I just went back in and realigned it a little bit, just slightly. Just trying to make sure that that lion's mane and the sentiment are both inside the circle. So I finally got the stamp to where I thought was a good position. But then I noticed there was a little gap on the right-hand side where my paper was. So I think my paper slid a little bit. Oh boy. But I just went right ahead and stamped anyways. And it actually turned out pretty good. So I'm not sure how I got that lucky. I don't know. Yep, there, I moved the paper over. Okay, that's how it worked out. I did move the paper over into the corner. And I do stamp it twice just because I really wanted that lion's mane to be nice and bold and just really pop out at you. Now here comes the fun part. I'm going to attempt to remove this mask. Again, it is, you know, sticky, but it's not going to tear your paper. And I think this is very cool looking. I love the way this looks. And I noticed that there's a little bit of ink on the side of the panel, some of the Tiki Torch. So as I was blending, my mask must have been slightly smaller than my panel. And so I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Should I trim it off? And then I thought, well, it kind of looks nice. It just reminds me as if you would continue that line of ink all the way around the panel on all 4 sides. It reminded me of maybe what it would look like if you matted it with a piece of cardstock underneath. So I grabbed my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station, and it comes with a ruler that's magnetic. And I went ahead and started blending this ink that was remained on my dauber. I have a foam dome blending tool. Now, if you have this Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station, you might not want to do this because it's hard to get the ink off. That's paper, by the way. That's just a paper sticker on top of that magnetic ruler. And so after I was done with this ink blending, I tried to wipe the ink off, and basically I started wiping the paper off. So just use something else, like a piece of cardstock, for example. Yeah, I did that for my second card, and you're going to see that in a minute. All right, so for my second card, I decided that I would trim the mask a little bit. Okay, so this is the masking paper with a die cut in the middle, a big circle die cut in the middle. I thought, well, maybe if I trim the edges a little bit, then I would have that nice blending line all the way around, and then I wouldn't have to blend it afterwards. So, I mean, I tried. I was a little bit leery. I didn't want to make it too narrow. I wanted it to be the right width and the right height. And then I thought, well, you know, just go with it. Go with what you have, and then you can always blend it afterwards. So continuing to use my Make Art Station. And this Make Art Station is giving me the measurements. See, as you can see, I'm lining it up just to make sure that my lines are straight, because sometimes when I use my trimmer, my trimming isn't always straight. So I was using the grid on this Make Art Station, which is etched in and painted white. That's helping me to line up things just to make sure that I have everything straight. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Apply this to the top of my panel, and then I am going to slowly pull the release paper. And as I'm pulling the release paper, making sure that I'm pushing down along that so that it lays flat. I was really happy with how this one turned out because, you know, the first one I kind of struggled a bit to try to just to get that laying straight. Okay, so my next stamp is called Winter Forest Pass. It's got some trees and some wintry scene. So I'm using Distress Oxide. I'm using Antique Linen and Vintage Photo. And my thought was that I would try to make it look like a antique scene. That's what I was going for here. I don't color the stamped image. I'm just instead using this spotlight technique to draw attention to this focal point and then just stamp in the circle. All right, so I did blend that circle pretty well, the full circle with the Antique Linen. You see there's a little bit of white space, but that's okay on the edges because I'm going to go in now with Vintage Photo and it'll all blend. It'll be fine. All right, I'm going to speed this up for the sake of time because I do craft quite slowly. If you ever watch any of my videos, you know that I am quite slow. And I am just doing that to be careful, because I know when I go quick or try to rush, I end up making mistakes and have to start all over again. So that's just my style. Everybody has their own style. Anyways, here we go. We're getting that vintage photo around the rim. And I'm just trying to keep this on the outside edge near the paper itself. You only need a little bit. So what I would say, if you do this technique, your darker shade, just use a little bit. Don't use a lot. It looks like there's a lot, but that's actually on the outside where the masking paper is. Now I'm going to go around the edges, because you remember what I'm trying to do here is create a line of color on all four sides of my mask. This is going to look like I have a piece of colored cardstock underneath my white panel. And it's just accident that I did it on that last card. And so I feel like I'll be doing this a lot more. First of all, it saves me time, because I need to find ways to save time when I'm creating my cards, because I'm a slow crafter, and you know, being on different design teams and whatnot, the quicker I can make my cards, then the quicker I can get my designs out there to share with you all. And then that'll free me up to be able to do more lives on my YouTube channel. And I do enjoy interacting with you all in a live format. And I appreciate each and every one of you that are tuned in today to watch this pre-recorded video. Speaking of lives, tonight, which is Monday, November 1st, 2021, I'll be having a live unboxing of all the new Technique Junkies stamps on my YouTube channel. So please plan on finding me again at 7 o'clock tonight. We'll go through each stamp. I'll show you all the cards that I made, and we'll talk about some other project ideas for the cards, as well as hopefully make 1 or 2 cards live. Also, I will be having a giveaway or 2. So if you know anything about my channel, you'll know that I do enjoy having giveaways as a way to thank you for watching. So please tune in tonight at 7. Again, Technique Junkies just released these stamps, and they're really very nice. I like these designs. There's a lot of new sentiments to this collection, and sentiments are always helpful to have. And here I'm just using cardstock to make that line all the way around my white card panel, so that I look like I have a piece of colored paper underneath. And that worked out really well. It looks pretty good. Wait till you see when I pick this up. I think that turned out really nice. It looks a little bit brown on paper, the circle in the middle, but when you look at it under regular lighting or in natural light, it doesn't look that brown. It looks more of that antique linen look. All right, so I have my acetate, and I'm going to try to align this circle stamp, and it was a little bit challenging. I had to do it a couple times, just because the one tree in this image is kind of slanting, and so I was thinking that I was not centering my stamp correctly, but actually it was just the optical illusion of that one tree that slants a little bit. Because really, if you ever are in the woods, which I live, there's woods all around me, and you're driving down the lane, trees are slanting, and you know, sometimes those trees fall down. So I like this stamp because it's extremely realistic looking. And I guess the reason why I use these colors, it reminds me of like old-fashioned photograph that's like sepia. So that's sort of where I was going with this. Next I took, and this is a sentiment that's new, and it says, "In the woods we return to reason and clarity." I had a piece of cardstock. This is the cardstock that I used to blend my 4 lines around my panel, and I finished blending on top of it with antique linen. That's antique linen ink that you're looking at. And I'm just going to stamp my sentiment right on top of this and heat emboss it with clear embossing powder. I'm using the Rabbit Hole Designs new anti-static powder brush. It reminds you of a makeup brush. It has a little tube or reservoir at the end that holds the powder. You see that? You just tap it a little bit on your desk and you then tap it across your panel, and a little bit of that anti-static powder comes out. Now I'm using Versafine Clair Ink, and the ink color is walnut, which is perfectly nice for this, the tone of this with vintage photo. I think it goes well with the colors that I selected. I'm using Nuvo clear embossing powder, and by the way, I will have linked in my description box below the embossing powder that I used, the anti-static embossing tool that I purchased, that was given to me actually by a friend. She purchased it for me from the Rabbit Hole Designs. I'll have that link below. And I'm just stamping this sentiment again. Sometimes I'll do it more than once because that way I can use it again on a future project. Why not? I already have this cardstock. Ink blended. Now I'm just going to trim using my decal trimmer. What I was saying was I might as well go ahead and stamp this sentiment out and have an extra version of it for another card in the future. Now the decal trimmer gives a slightly rough looking edge around your paper, but it's not rough to the touch, by the way, in case you're wondering. You know, you're not going to feel it being that rough. But it's cool for sentiments because it looks like you then die cut your sentiments. Okay, so this is the point in my project where I'm like, man, okay, I wish I could have done this a little differently. I like the way the sentiment is on that card that's been ink blended, but if I put it underneath the picture that I stamped, it covers up a little bit of the picture. So hindsight is 20/20. I wish that my circle was a little bit higher, because then I could have just had that little sentiment fit right under that image. So watch what I'm talking about here. I'm going to go ahead with my tape runner and put this panel on a white card base. Okay, so we've created 2 cards today, or we're almost done, using 3 different stamps from the new Technique Junkies release. First, we used the stamp that's called Courage, which has the lion and a sentiment. It's all one stamp. And then we're using the Winter Forest Pass, which is the forest image. And then we're using the sentiment, which is new, called In the Woods We Return to Reason and Clarity. And the name of that sentiment is In the Woods. I'll have everything linked below in my description box. So what I'm doing, instead of using the little heat embossed sentiment, I'm going to just go ahead and stamp the sentiment directly onto the card and heat emboss it, which is fine. It turned out fine, but like I said, if I make this card again, I'm going to bump that circle up just a little bit. That way I'll have enough room underneath the image to go ahead and adhere that sentiment. It just makes it more pronounced, I guess. But in the end, it looks really nice. It just is a super clean and simple looking image card. And I'm really pleased with how it turned out. Earlier when I said I used walnut ink, it's actually called pine cone. That's the color ink that I'm using from Versafine Clair. This is a pigment ink, which means it stays wet on top of your paper for a little bit longer than a dye-based ink would. So it gives you just a little bit of time that you can go and heat emboss it once you stamp it. And so I just stamped it once. I didn't re-ink my stamp. You can if you want to, but sometimes if you continually re-ink your sentiments, the letters get a little blurry, and I wanted it to look nice and sharp. Okay, so then I'm using a brush just to get rid of some of the extra embossing powder, and again I'm using Nuvo clear embossing powder, and I'll take my heat gun and heat that sentiment up. It does warp it a little bit just because I've already taped it down to my panel, but it's really nothing noticeable to be concerned about. Here are my finished cards for you. And this one has the lion. It says courage. I think this one just glows. I love the way it turned out. And here we have our winter forest pass with in the woods sentiment. And as you can see, this scene is not as dark as it looks on my camera with filming. And it reminds me of a photo, like a sepia photo from the past. Thank you for watching my premiere video featuring some of the new stamps from Technique Junkies. And I hope you'll join me tonight as this promo picture shows you at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to be doing a live unboxing of all the new stamps from Technique Junkies and prize giveaways. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like this spotlight technique. Don't forget to leave a comment. I love your comments. I really enjoy them and reading your feedback. And if you're new to my channel, I would love it if you would subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. Have a hopeful day. Bye-bye.